So recently I edited some images and shared those on social media. These images were from a trip that I took to the Palouse region in Washington State. Now this is a beautiful farming area with rolling hills and the green wheat fields. It's always fun to photograph. From my trip last year, I had hundreds of images I took, and sometimes I'll just cull through quickly and I'll share a few on social media. And sometimes I'll just go back later and look at it with fresh eyes. And that's what I did in this case. I found some images that I really liked. I am a Lightroom user and Photoshop user, so I will share with you how I process those images. So let's take a look right now, and I'll show you how I process those images. Okay, let's jump right in. I have selected a few images that I will go through here. I actually have a copy of the edited images as well as the raw files. Now, since I work on the raw files, I made a copy of this first image. So here is the one I worked on, and here is the one that I had to reset. So this is out of the camera right here, the one you're looking at. And as you can see, it's just a little bit hazy. In this particular image, what I wanted to do was sort of probably go here to Lightroom, and I'm going to look for my dehaze just a little bit. You don't want to make it too crunchy. I went ahead and did that. I might bring down the exposure just a little bit, and that's getting a little bit closer to what I have. I really don't like using the spot removal tool for Lightroom, but I'm going to go ahead because I have this one spot that's really annoying right there. Now I may do some more in Photoshop because I like their tool much better for getting out the spots and things that you want out of your image. So I'm going to start with that, but I'm going to do some masking. So first of all, I'm going to select the radial gradient. Let's move it over. I'm actually going to make it big enough so that we can make sort of a vignette on this image so that we highlight the barn and the trees in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert. Let's go ahead and pull that down a little bit. That's looking pretty good. Pull it down, not too much because then it looks unnatural. So this sort of, when you put this type of vignetting on it, it sort of highlights. So I like to use the radial tool for that purpose. Now another thing I might do with this, okay, another thing that I might do is create another mask. Now you can actually copy a mask, so let's copy this one. I'm going to duplicate it. The second mask, I do not want to invert it, okay? So what I'm going to do is probably bring down the contrast. I'm going to actually make this just a tad brighter, and I might even warm it up a little with the temperature just a little bit so it looks like the light is in the center of the image. So this is basically all I did. I might apply a little bit of clarity. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm actually going to take this image into Photoshop, excuse me. So let's open this up into Photoshop. All right, so what I'm going to do is duplicate the image. Now I'm going to zoom in really close here. Let's find those spots. So some of them are natural to the environment, but sometimes my sensor was really dirty on this trip, and so some of the things might have come across. It doesn't look too bad actually. Okay, so I want to apply some sharpening to this because if you zoom in on this, you're going to see that this barn is just a little bit too fuzzy. I don't want to say fuzzy, but a little soft. That's a better word for it. So what I'm going to do is I actually like using Topaz tools. I have Topaz sharpening here, and I'm going to use this to actually sharpen the image. Let's move it to the barn and you can see what it does here. So I let Topaz choose which one looks best. Now if you look at the original one on the left, you can see it looks a little soft, and how on the right it really sharpens it up really nicely. It doesn't look weird or anything to me. It looks sort of natural. So I'm not going to really make any adjustments here, but I'm going to apply it. And this usually takes a few seconds, and then I'll save it back into Photoshop. And once I have it saved in Photoshop, I'll look it over once again and see if maybe there's anything I need to get rid of before saving it into Lightroom. I'm going to save this. And by saving it, it's going to save back into Lightroom. So let's go back to Lightroom, and there it is. Let me just show you what the final image I came up with. This is the raw file, but this is the image I ultimately went with. Okay, let's go to this one. So this is an image that to me I really like. I like the layers, I like the light and the composition. Create a virtual copy. So now I have my copy, and let me just reset this in case I made some adjustments. Okay, so it looks like I did some cropping. So a lot of times I'll come down here, because these are really large files. I'm working with 61 megapixels on my Sony a7R IV, and so I don't mind cropping one single bit. So basically I'm just going to scale this to where I want it. And that looks about right. All right, so what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to put a little bit of dehaze, not too much, just a little bit. I'm going to lighten it just a bit, and I also see something I can clean up right away, and that's this little, but we'll get rid of that. I'm going to create a mask, and I'm going to probably use the radial tool. Now let's go ahead and draw it out. Now I don't do this tool on every photo, but it seems like it worked on a lot of these, so that's why I am showing it to you. I'm going to invert this. You go up to the top, invert it. Now this red, you can show the overlay here or not. So let me just turn that off, and you can see what happens when I adjust the exposure. Now I'm just going to bring down just a little bit, not too much. That looks pretty good, and I'm going to go ahead and do kind of the same thing of what I did on the other photo actually. So I'll try to duplicate it, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to invert it there, and I'm going to bring up the exposure here and bring the highlights down a bit, add a little bit of contrast. I also want to warm it up a little bit in the center. Now I think not too much, but I really like this color right in here and the golden tones in this image. So here's another one where I would go ahead and open it up into Photoshop. Background copy. All right, well, there's not a whole lot. I do see a few little spots I might take care of. One of them is over here. Anything that's distracting to me, I don't like things coming out of corners, sides, that may distract, but you definitely want to get those spots out, or sensor spots. All right, so this image looks a little soft as well, but to me, it's okay if I'm uploading this. I can add a little sharpening in Lightroom or clarity, and it's fine for sharing online. But if I'm going to print this out, I want it to be as sharp as ever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and sharpen that in Topaz. Let's look at this ground over here. I might say that it's a little noisy and see what happens here. All right, I just went ahead and applied that. It'll take a couple seconds. So this is going to actually save over back into Photoshop as well, and then we'll save it into Lightroom. A lot of times with these images, there's not a whole lot I need to do. I don't want to be spending a lot of time on the computer editing images. So if something really needs a lot of work because it's not a good photograph, I didn't take the best shot, I may not keep it. I may get rid of it. So let's go ahead and save this. All right. So let's go back to Lightroom. This is going to save it back into Lightroom. And let me just actually show you the photo that okay, this one, it looks like I got rid of some of the texture that I like on this. Here's the actual image that I worked on right here. So let me put that on full screen for you. So this is the image, and I really, really love these farm hill images from Palouse, where you've got the lines from the tractors and you have all this texture, and there's so many compositional possibilities with it. I just love it so much. So it's a really fun place to shoot. Now here's the actual raw image that I took, and this one actually, here's all the things that I did to it. So as you can see with this, I've got the radial tool right here, and I kind of made some adjustments to the contrast on this, as well as a little bit more warmth I brought into it there. And then let's go to this other one. The second mask that I used was also one of those where I inverted it. As you can see, I checked the invert here and I brought down the exposure just a little bit. Now this highlights the center of the image, and I really like using this feature. And here's another one where I might have lightened it on this one where I didn't invert it. So everything that I did, like the contrast, the exposure, the temperature, all that affected the center of the image. And also, as you can see from this raw photo right here, I just decided to crop it out. So I made this crop, and let's look at this full screen here. I also used some Topaz to sharpen it. I want my images to be ready to print. And so I'll go ahead and apply the sharpening. So this image right here was really easy as well. The lighting was good, the color was good. If I were to make a copy of this, create a virtual copy. And so on my copy, I'm gonna reset it. Okay, what I did on this is cropped this image in a bit. I just scaled it in like I showed you before. And then I picked this composition here. I really like this little homestead area here with the trees around it, the light right here in the part that's near the homestead. I really like that. So there wasn't a whole lot to do with this image. I did a little contrast here, and then I just brought it into Topaz and sharpened it. So that was a really easy image. So these images that I took last year were pretty good out of camera, and they just needed some little fine tuning. On this particular image, you've got that haze problem again that's pretty common. If you've never been to the Palouse, you are up on a butte and you've got your telephoto lens, your long lens, and you are looking around the butte, finding compositions. And so all of these were from on top of the butte, looking down on the farmland. So in this final image that I did, you can see that there wasn't a whole lot to do except some sharpening and dehaze. So on this image, if I were to make a virtual copy here and reset it, we'll see. Oh, okay. Here's the raw image. And you can see by just using the dehaze just a bit, you don't want to go overboard on it, and just bringing down the exposure just a little bit, you can see that it makes a big difference on this image here. And of course, I used some cropping. Just doing that, I came to this image, and I did use some contrast, and then I did some sharpening in Topaz. Now, I did not use any saturation on any of these images because it wasn't necessary. Let me put this on the full screen for you. So here's the image, and if I were to zoom in, you can see that you can completely read that sign on the building, the Whitman County Grower. So this image has been sharpened. It looks really good, and I'm quite pleased with this image. All right, well, that was just an easy way of showing you a few images that I edited. Like I said, these were simple edits because I didn't have to do a whole lot to these images. So I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.